The memes. Show me.
Memes, the DNA of the soul. They shape our world. They are the culture. They are everything we pass on.
Back when I first played Metal Gear Rising, I wasn't sure if it was taking the piss or not. I'd only ever heard the term meme in the modern internet culture context. One quick Google search later, and I realized this was typical Metal Gear writing. Seemingly ridiculous, but grounded in some form of reality. The actual definition of the word meme is an idea, behavior, style, or usage that spreads from person to person within a culture. The pictures on social media that we call memes still embody this basic concept. Even the most innocuous memes can make subtle suggestions to their audience, like cats are weird, or Leonardo DiCaprio is charming, or Israel is morally bankrupt, just some totally random examples. And within this framing, I've been thinking a lot about Islamic memes, or at least ones that incorporate aspects of Islamic culture into them. There's a broad range of memes that fall under this category, but I want to narrow it down to the subsection that superimpose Islamic iconography onto popular Western and Japanese media. I know that sounds silly, but it ties into a much bigger point I want to touch on later in the video. But before I get to all that, it's important to define what kind of meme I'm actually talking about. Think of this as a brief tutorial on how to make your own Islamic memes. First of all, and just in case you're some alien life form that doesn't know what memes are, you're going to need some screenshot to work with. Could be from a TV show, anime, manga, comic book, whatever it is it happens to be. Bonus points if you can frame the picture in such a way that it can be interpreted as someone praying or partaking in another Islamic practice. But the truth is that it doesn't matter all that much if you just want to go for the low-hanging fruit. Next, a mainstay of a lot of these memes is imposing some sort of headwear onto the characters. This can vary widely depending on which country or region of the world you want to represent or are from, but I've typically seen kafiyas, which come in various color combinations depending on the country, taqiyas, tarbushes, and kufis. There is varying religious and cultural significance behind each of these items. A taqiyya, for example, is largely a religious statement, as it is believed that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ wore one, and it is therefore mustahab or approved of. The kafiyya carries significantly different meanings from culture to culture, and honestly could have an entire video dedicated to it alone. For women, as you can imagine, a hijab is sometimes added, though believe it or not, that doesn't seem to be as common as adding something onto the men, at least as far as I've seen. I should note that despite what these memes might imply, these headdresses aren't actually worn by every single Muslim or even particularly prevalent. It's more just a case of cultural signaling, as they make it immediately obvious that you are looking at a Muslim meme. In the same vein, you can give the characters a nice big beard, but real connoisseurs gravitate towards characters that already have them. But I find what really makes these kinds of memes pop, what separates the cream of the crop from run-of-the-mill stuff, is if you're conveying something that really makes it clear that you have a strong grasp on Arab or Islamic culture. Overarching religious iconography and practices are good places to start, but I'm talking more about the nitty-gritty, the date at iftar, the guy walking off with your shoes at the masjid, all the little moments and interactions that only the people that have actually encountered them would know about. Not only does that create a stronger sense of community between Muslims through shared experience, but it exposes non-Muslims to aspects of our culture that they'd have never known about if it weren't for these memes. It helps break through the dehumanization we suffer at the hands of their media ecosystem, and that's the larger point I want to tie this video to. I kinda had to front load the meme stuff so people would pay attention, but the truth is that I often use this channel to exercise my brain a bit and look at things from a broader perspective. As I looked at a lot of these memes, I asked myself, is there any value to them? Why do these exist? I'm sure if I asked the people who put them together, they would tell me that they just made them for the laughs. But, and like I said, looking at it from a broader perspective, I wonder if it runs a little deeper than that. As I've pointed out in previous videos, Muslim countries don't really put out a lot of media that is accessible to a global audience. There are some, I'd say Turkey in particular has had some success distributing things on Netflix, but most of these efforts haven't really had the necessary promotional muscle behind them to generate much publicity outside very niche audiences. This means we don't really have much cultural leverage. When you see Muslims in popular media, they are most often written by non-Muslims, and it shows. I have a more detailed video about this topic on my channel if you want specifics, but the statement Muslims are usually portrayed poorly in media shouldn't exactly come off as an extraordinary claim. Meanwhile, Muslim countries have been incapable of pushing back on this negativity, leaving a cultural vacuum that is being filled by, well, memes. It's been up to us to try and distribute our own culture and experiences via the internet because traditional media has largely failed at doing so. I know this sounds like a silly thing to harp on or think too deeply about, but it matters more than you might think. I know a lot of more traditional Muslims that stick their noses up at poppin' internet culture and insist that it's all meaningless and has nothing to do with our akhirah. In fact, I'm sure if you scroll down to the comments right now, there'll be some posts to that effect. I'm not really prepared to argue within a religious framing, but culturally, I take issue with the notion that it's all meaningless. We're in a rapidly expanding, globalized entertainment industry. Games and movies where Muslims are the villain are being watched from everyone from Los Angeles to New Zealand. And most Muslim countries haven't provided an effective response to that kind of saturation of Islamophobia. And it's not like we can't. It used to be that it was kinda just America and pockets of Western Europe that dominated international media. The US in particular has been wildly successful at creating an entertainment industrial complex that has effectively transmitted their values across the planet. We've all internalized certain parts of American culture almost unwittingly, from fashion sense to their idolizing of personal independence at the cost of family, friends, pretty much everyone else around them, if the pandemic has been anything to go by. And if you go to any of the major cities in the Middle East, for example, a lot of people there are now emulating Americans. You can argue to death whether or not that's a good or bad thing, but the point is that that's the kind of soft power that a strong media presence can generate. But in more recent decades, other cultures have taken notice of this fact and adapted in kind. Look at Japan. I read an excellent article in Quartz that I'll link to in the description that breaks down how Japan effectively leveraged their pop culture to transform their image from a ruthless, militaristic empire to quirky and lovable. In fact, this is a quote taken directly from the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs' website that I'll also link to. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, aiming to further the understanding and trust of Japan, is using pop culture in addition to traditional culture and art as its primary tools for cultural diplomacy. Among young people, pop culture, such as manga and anime, have been popular worldwide in recent years. See, Japan knows that the best way to disarm harmful stereotypes about themselves is to be proactive and market their own stuff to a global audience and take control of the narrative. This term that they use, cultural diplomacy, is an excellent way to put it. It's not diplomacy between the heads of state of each of these countries. It's diplomacy between the entire population of one country to another. They've been pretty much the only non-English speaking country to successfully challenge American hegemony in the global media market, though South Korea has also found some success more recently with the explosion of K-pop and dramas, and I am sure that there are many smaller European countries whose films have gained notoriety throughout the years. Point being, memes are cool and funny, crazy, but I can't help but think that this fascination with using other countries' media as a basis for our own memes is a symptom of the fact that we don't have much of our own to use. And I kind of worked from my gut to my head in terms of trying to figure out why that might be an issue. For anyone who says none of this stuff matters and it's all meaningless, I'm sorry, but at least from my point of view, you're pretty much just straight up wrong. There are too many studies out there, I'll link to at least one of them in the description, that have found how strongly media affects our perceptions of different cultures and religions. For anyone to say that it doesn't matter just seems strange to me. It's worked for America, it's worked for Japan, I don't see why it wouldn't work for us. I wanted to put this video out partly just to laugh at and celebrate Muslim meme culture, but also to just generate some conversation. I know it sounds like I'm kind of lecturing the heads of whatever media markets exist in Arab or Muslim countries, but I don't know. Like I said, I want to just give my brain some exercise, and this is the kind of thinking that I do when I look at things from a slightly different perspective, I suppose. I'm sorry if you were hoping that this was just a kind of meme review, but the truth is that I just kind of find those lazy and boring and not really insightful, so I decided to give it my own spin. Anyway, that's the video. I've opened a Substack now that I put articles onto. Unfortunately, I only have one done right now, but I've decided that there's some content that just doesn't belong on the channel, and it's been a process trying to figure out what I should and shouldn't make videos about, which has been part of why I haven't been uploading anywhere near as much as I want to. Point being, if you're looking for some extra content, I'll link to my Substack in the description. And of course, it's always nice when you comment, like the video, subscribe. You know how these things work. I know you know. And yeah, ma salama.